A sanctioned Chinese oil tanker just tried to run Trump's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. It made it through. Then it stopped. It turned around and it went right back to Iran. The blockade is working, and what comes next is going to squeeze Tehran harder than anything we've hit them with yet. Here's what happened. The Rich Starry, we talked about it the other day. A lot of news reports said that it made it through. It's a Malawi-flagged, Chinese-owned, blacklisted by the U.S. since 2023. It had been hiding in the Persian Gulf for over 10 days with its transponder turned off or masked. Monday night, it made a run for it. 250,000 barrels of methanol on board. It pushed straight through the Strait of Hormuz into the Gulf of Oman. And for a minute, it looked like it got through. It turned off its transponder. And then it didn't. Updating tracking data shows the ship stopped dead in the Gulf of Oman, then made a U-turn, went right back through the strait, and now it's sitting off the coast of CASHApp Island, Iran's side, going nowhere. So this story, Reuters ran with this. Now, that's not the only one. CENTCOM says 6, maybe 8 merchant ships were caught and forced to dock within the first 24 hours of the blockade. At least 2 were directly intercepted by a U.S. destroyer. Another sanctioned ship, the Ellipse, a Moros-flagged methanol carrier, got stopped in the same spot. Every single tanker that tried to run is sitting idle alongside Iran's coastline right now.
On the Strait of Hormuz could carry massive implications as it seeks to prevent ships from entering or exiting all of Iran's ports. Following failed peace talks in Islamabad on April 11th, President Trump vowed to carry on the blockade as a means to strangle Iran's already weakened economy.
So their economy is failing right now. And I'm going to explain to you why this blockade is so important and why this matters more than people realize. Since this war kicked off on February 28th, Iran has been strangling the Strait of Hormuz. Before the conflict, over 130 ships a day passed through that area. And now it's a handful. Tehran was charging tolls as high as $2 million per ship, per crossing. They were turning the world's most important oil choke point into their personal toll booth. And who was still getting through? Iran and China. That's it. Iranian oil flowing out, Chinese money flowing in. That was keeping the regime funded while they shot at our aircraft and threatened every other ship in the passage. So Trump ordered the blockade not to close the strait, to reopen it. CENTCOM put over 24 warships on station, 10,000 service members, and the mission is specific. Only ships leaving and dealing with Iran are subject to the blockade. Everyone else, open water. I want you to hear this message that they're actually putting out. They're broadcasting this open to mariners so everyone hears exactly what the White House and the United States Navy and what kind of rules we're playing by.
The U.S. has announced a formal blockade of Iranian ports and coastal areas. This is illegal action. All vessels are advised to immediately return to port if leaving and discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance.
We will use force if you don't comply. You heard that? This is from CENTCOM. This is shared by the White House. And Central Command is not playing games right now. All U.S. naval vessels will use force. We will board you. If you want to play games, if you want to FA, you're gonna FO. And all naval vessels on patrol in the Gulf of Oman, CENTCOM is continuing to execute this order. And I'm glad to see it because the Middle East understands one thing and one thing only, and that is power. And we are exuding our power throughout the entire region. Now, the thing that gets me here is this story that was put out by Reuters. It's supposed to be some kind of, level-headed news organization. And this story was yesterday, April 13th. Strait of Hormuz traffic barely affected on the first day. Now, we're starting to understand now that the news media is not really our friend, and they're putting out information which could very well cause some major disasters in that area, some major problems for mariners that are there. And it shows the Rich Starry, and it just assumed it. And you know what you do when you assume? You make an ass out of you and me. And that's what happened. And there's a lot of people, a lot of the doomers that ran with this. They ran with this entire freaking narrative that Iran is winning, America's losing, Trump's losing, we can't control this, we can't do that. Well, now the facts are in. Thanks for the pointer on the blockade. CENTCOM's April 12th announcement and April 13th implementation is clear. U.S. forces are blocking maritime traffic to from Iranian ports and coast, not the Strait of Hormuz transit to non-Iranian ports. So if you don't go to an Iranian port, let's say you go to Bahrain, let's say you go to the UAE, let's say you go to Dubai, the Emirates, you're good to go. But if you're dealing with Iran, you're providing money to the world's largest state sponsor of terror. And that is where these guys right here will not allow you through. CENTCOM has finished playing games. And it goes on here. Iranian cargo flag vessel tried to evade the U.S. blockade after leaving Bandar Abbas, exiting the Strait of Hormuz, transiting along the Iranian coastline. The guided missile destroyer Spruance successfully redirected the vessel, which is heading back to Iran. 10 vessels have now been turned around. 0 ships have been broken through since the start of the U.S. blockade on Monday. But you're starting to understand the news media. They want you to they want to scare you. They want to sow a little bit of doubt. And after implementing this blockade on ships entering and departing, American forces have halted economic trade going into and out of Iran by sea. United States sailors, Marines, and airmen remain positioned and ready to act against any vessels seeking to violate this blockade. And I am so glad to see it. And there's another one right here in action. These are the men and women that are there doing the work. And it scares the hell out of the Democrat Party. It scares the hell out of the doomers and the right wing, what I would say grifters. Because truth is out there. You just have to find it. Trump put it out on True Social, said China should be happy because he's permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. Said this situation will never happen again. That's a message to Beijing and Tehran at the same time. But here's where it gets complicated. This is the part I want to talk about. I spent 20 years on submarines. I know how tracking and evasion works in these waters. Iran's shadow fleet is not amateur hour. That is something you can't underestimate, what they have left. These ships have been spent years developing tactics to avoid detection. They turn off their transponders. They spoof their AIS data. That's the system that broadcasts the ship's identity and position. They'll show a fake destination, a fake flag state. Some of them go completely dark for days. The Rich Starry did exactly that. Went dark for 10 days before making its run. Another ship, the Manali, it's a Panama flag bulk carrier. It has a history of spoofing its location entirely. It tried to transit yesterday on Tuesday with its destination listed as the UAE. Maybe it's legit, maybe it's not. That's the game. Shipping analyst at Lloyd's List Intelligence said it's straight. These operators are experts at evading detection. Well, the United States Navy is there, and they're all watching. We've got drones in the sky, we've got satellites, we have air support, we got submarines, we've got some underwater drones. So the question becomes, can the U.S. Navy maintain perfect awareness across every ship, every route, every spoof signal in one of the busiest waterways on Earth? Here's my take. Short term, yes, absolutely. 24 warships, 10,000 personnel, plus the intelligence architecture behind it, maritime patrol aircraft, satellite coverage, signals intelligence. CENTCOM isn't just eyeballing ships through binoculars. They're cross-referencing trafficking data with cargo manifests, ownership records, sanctions list, port histories. That's how you catch a ship that went dark for 10 days and still know exactly what it's carrying and who owns it. The Rich Starry didn't get caught because it was visible. It got caught because the targeting data was already built. The Navy knew what to look for before it moved. Long term, the harder question, a blockade is one of the most resource-intensive operations a Navy can run. You have to sustain it, rotate ships, maintain readiness. Iran's shadow fleet will adapt. They always do. They'll try new routes, new flags, new spoofing techniques. They might have a diversion. And I don't know what that is, but I think the United States will be ready for it. They'll wait for gaps in coverage and test every seam. But right now, day 1, day 2, day 3, the blockade's holding. The tankers turned back. The oil isn't flowing. Iran just lost its revenue lifeline. That's the situation tonight. The blockade, it's working. The Chinese tankers turned around. A hell of a lot of them are headed to the United States. Iran's shadow fleet isn't done, but they're going to keep probing. You can see here what's happening below me. The Chinese tankers turned around. CENTCOM can sustain this for weeks, not days. What do you think? Can the Navy hold this blockade? Or does Iran find a way through? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe if you're not already. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.